Franklin came to the store and picked out his own groceries and wanted to ask the saleswoman what products were cheaper, but when she saw a black man, she told him to leave immediately. The automatic doors slid open as Franklin stepped into the bright, overly air-conditioned grocery store, the hum of fluorescent lights blending with the low murmur of shoppers and the occasional squeak of shopping cart wheels. It was a calm afternoon, the kind where the sun sat high but lazily in the sky, casting long shadows through the glass panels above. Franklin had just come off a long shift and hadn't eaten all day, his stomach reminding him with every step that he needed to get anything into his system. He didn't dress fancy, a plain white t-shirt, slightly faded jeans, and scuffed sneakers. Nothing about him stood out more than anyone else in the store, or so he thought. He grabbed a basket and made his way past the automatic produce mist sprayers, pausing at the apples, checking for the ripest ones, lost in thought. That's when he heard the sharp voice behind him, laced with a tone that didn't match the rest of the environment. "Excuse me, sir," the woman said. Franklin turned, expecting a casual customer service offer. Maybe she was going to ask if he needed help finding something. Instead, her expression was tight, her eyes narrowed in a way that made his chest tighten before she even finished her sentence. "You can't be here." He blinked. "Sorry?" he asked, confused, looking around to make sure she was actually speaking to him. She took a step closer, arms crossed, wearing a red vest with the store's logo, her name tag shining under the harsh lights. "You need to leave. Now," she said flatly. "This store doesn't want trouble." Franklin laughed awkwardly, thinking there had to be some kind of mistake. "Trouble?" he asked. "I just got here. I haven't done anything." "You people never do anything, right? Not until something gets stolen or someone ends up shouting in the aisles," she said, her voice low, but her tone unmistakably venomous. Franklin's face dropped. For a moment, he couldn't find words. He looked at her, then down at himself, and then around the store to see if anyone else was hearing this. A couple passing by glanced in their direction, but quickly turned away, pretending not to notice. "Are you serious right now?" he asked, the words finally coming out, thick with disbelief. "You're kicking me out because I'm black?" The woman didn't flinch. "I'm asking you to leave," she repeated. "Before I call security." His stomach churned with a sick mix of embarrassment and anger. "Ma'am, I'm here to buy groceries. I'm hungry. I haven't even been in here 5 minutes. What did I do? You being here is enough," she snapped. "This isn't the place for you. People like you." Her words hit him like ice water. He couldn't believe this was happening. Not here, not now, not in front of everyone who just kept walking like nothing was going on. "What's your name?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "I want to speak to your manager." "You don't need to know my name," she said with a smug curl of her lips. "And I am the manager right now. So unless you want things to get ugly, you should just go." Franklin stared at her, his mind racing, his fists clenching and unclenching at his sides. He wasn't going to let her win. He hadn't come here looking for a fight. He just wanted some food. He wanted to be treated like a human being. "I'm not leaving," he said, voice low, controlled. "You don't have the right to talk to me like that." Her eyes narrowed. "I'll call security," she warned. "Go ahead," he replied, not backing down. "Let's see what they think about this." Around them, the air felt charged, heavy with the tension that had no place in a grocery store on a weekday afternoon. Franklin could feel the stares now, furtive, curious, judgmental, but no one stepped in. No one said anything. He could hear his own heartbeat, loud in his ears. The woman pulled a walkie-talkie from her vest and pressed the button. "Security to produce," she said calmly. "We have a situation." Franklin didn't move. He looked at the apples in his hand, then placed them gently back on the shelf. He stood tall, refusing to give her the satisfaction of looking rattled, even though inside he felt like the ground had cracked beneath him. It wasn't just about groceries anymore. It was about the years of moments like this, too many to count, being treated like a threat before being seen as a man. He saw the security guard round the corner, tall, wearing dark blue, with a radio clipped to his chest and a baton hanging from his belt. The guard glanced at Franklin, then at the woman, who immediately started speaking. "He won't leave," she said, pointing at Franklin. "He came in here looking for trouble. I told him to go, but he's refusing." Franklin raised his hands slightly, not in surrender but in transparency. "I came in to buy food," he said. "That's all. She told me to leave because of how I look. That's the real story." The guard hesitated, clearly caught in the middle, but Franklin could see the same cautious distance in his eyes, like he was already leaning toward believing the woman just because she had a uniform and a name tag. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises," the guard said, trying to sound neutral. "You're causing a disruption." "I didn't cause anything," Franklin said, feeling heat rise up his neck. "I walked in. I picked up fruit. She started all this." "Please don't make this harder than it needs to be," the guard said. "You need to leave." Franklin looked around one last time, hoping anyone would say something, step in, acknowledge what was really happening. But there was only silence, awkward and complicit. With a tight jaw and fire behind his eyes, he took one slow step backward, then another. He didn't want to give them the satisfaction, but he also didn't want to be dragged out. As he walked toward the door, he could still feel the eyes on him, could still hear the silence screaming in his ears. Just before he crossed the threshold, he turned back to the woman and said, "This isn't over." Her smirk faltered just slightly, but she didn't respond. Franklin stepped out into the sunlight, blinking as the brightness hit his face. He stood there for a long moment, staring at the automatic doors that had closed behind him like a judgment. His chest ached, not from the confrontation, but from the weight of it all, the injustice so routine it almost didn't shock him anymore. Franklin stood his ground, the tension in his jaw sharp as steel, his eyes locked on the woman who had just told him to leave for no reason other than the color of his skin. He didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't back down. His voice, though strained, remained firm and even. "I'm not going anywhere," he said, the words dropping like stones in the tense air between them. "You don't have the right to speak to me like that. I came here to buy groceries. I'm hungry. That's it. You're treating me like a criminal just for walking into your store." The woman's expression twisted into a mask of fake calm, hiding beneath it a boiling rage, as though his refusal to submit had offended her on some deep, personal level. "I'm warning you," she hissed. "You either walk out now or I call security and they will make you leave. You don't belong here." "I belong anywhere I choose to be," Franklin said, louder now, his voice carrying past the nearby shelves and catching the ears of a few distant shoppers who began to glance over curiously, awkwardly pretending to browse while listening in. "This is a public business. I'm not stealing, I'm not shouting, I'm not doing anything wrong. You're harassing me, and you're going to regret it." "Enough," she snapped, already reaching for her walkie-talkie again, her thumb pressing hard on the side. "Security to produce. Now. Immediately." Her voice was sharp, urgent, as if Franklin had done something violent, something dangerous, and now he was a threat to everyone around him. Franklin's heart pounded in his chest, not from fear, but from the bitter anger of knowing what was about to happen, knowing how quickly a situation like this could spin out of control, not because of his actions, but because of how people perceived him. He looked at the other customers again, silently pleading with their eyes. Do you see what's happening here? Do you care? But they all avoided his gaze. The sound of heavy boots against tile echoed down the aisle as two security guards appeared, one of them a burly man with a shaved head and a clenched jaw, the other younger, but just as stern. They approached quickly, their expressions unreadable, but already leaning toward aggression. "Sir," the older one said, gesturing toward the exit, "we've been asked to escort you out of the store. Please come with us." "I haven't done anything," Franklin said, his voice cracking slightly from the strain. "She doesn't like the way I look, and now I'm being thrown out? This is racism. Plain and simple." "Sir, we're not here to debate," the younger guard said, stepping closer. "We've got a complaint, and we're asking you to leave peacefully." "I'm not leaving," Franklin said again, this time quieter but more intense. "Not until someone with real authority hears me out. I just want to buy food. That's it." "She's the one making this a scene." The female employee folded her arms, stepping slightly behind the guards now, safe in the knowledge that Muscle had arrived to enforce her version of the story. "He's being aggressive," she said loudly, her voice now directed at the security team. "He refused to leave when I asked him. I'm scared. He won't stop yelling." Franklin's jaw dropped. "What? Are you serious? I haven't even raised my voice until now." "You're lying. Let's go," the older guard said, cutting him off, his hand now reaching toward Franklin's arm. "Don't make us escalate this." Franklin pulled back slightly. "Don't touch me. I'll walk. But I want this documented. I want your names. I want the store owner to see this footage. I didn't come here for this. I didn't ask for this." "Then you should have left when you were told," the woman sneered from behind them. The guards flanked him on either side, not pushing him, but making it very clear that he had no more options left. Franklin moved toward the exit, his eyes still scanning the store, hoping for a witness brave enough to speak up, to stand up, but no one did. They just watched from behind carts and displays, their silence louder than any of the shouting. As they reached the front entrance, the older guard leaned in and muttered, "And don't come back here. Ever. You're banned from this store." Franklin stopped dead in his tracks, turning to face him. "For what?" he asked, his voice shaking. "For existing?" The guard didn't answer, just pointed to the doors, which hissed open with a gust of cold air. Franklin walked out, the weight of humiliation settling deep into his bones. Outside, the afternoon sun seemed cruelly bright, as if mocking the dark, sour experience he had just endured. He stood on the sidewalk, watching as the doors closed behind him, sealing him out, like he was the problem, the threat. He looked down at his empty hands, the ones that were supposed to be holding food. His stomach growled again, but the hunger was drowned out by the burning in his chest. Rage, sadness, exhaustion. This wasn't the first time he'd been treated like this, and he feared it wouldn't be the last. He stood there for what felt like hours, people walking past him without a second glance, cars rolling by, the world moving forward as though nothing had happened. He kept thinking about how quickly things had spiraled, how calmly she had lied, how easily the guards had believed her, how no one had said a word to defend him, how powerless he'd felt even while trying to assert his rights. His mind kept replaying every second, every syllable, every glance of judgment from people who'd seen him as a problem rather than a person. A few minutes later, he heard a voice behind him, different from the others, older, slower, deliberate. "Excuse me, son," the voice said. Franklin turned, expecting another insult, another command to move on. But what he saw was a man in his 60s, wearing a sharp dress shirt, gold watch, and slacks. He looked familiar, like someone Franklin had seen in a newspaper or on a billboard. The man stepped closer. "I saw what happened in there," he said. "Every word." Franklin narrowed his eyes. "Yeah, and you just watched." The man looked ashamed. "Not proud of that," he admitted. "But I'm not just another shopper. I own that store." Franklin's eyebrows lifted in disbelief. "You own it." "That's right," the man said. "And I'm ashamed of what just happened under my roof." Franklin didn't know what to say. The store owner looked down, shook his head. "Come with me," he said quietly. "Let's fix this." Franklin hesitated. "What's the point?" "Justice," the man said. "Late, but not forgotten." The store owner placed a firm hand on Franklin's shoulder and said, "Let's go back in. Together." Franklin didn't move at first, still stunned by the whirlwind of humiliation he had just gone through, but something in the man's voice felt grounded, steady, remorseful, determined. So Franklin nodded slowly, and together they turned toward the glass doors. As they re-entered, the automatic sensors hissed them back into the cool, sterile air of the store. The same shoppers who had looked away moments earlier now stole longer glances, their curiosity piqued by the unexpected return, especially now that Franklin was walking side by side with someone clearly in a position of power. The two security guards at the front shifted uncomfortably, glancing between each other with confusion. The store owner gave them a tight nod, but no words, his pace never slowing as he led Franklin past the registers and toward the back, where the altercation had taken place. And there, like nothing had happened, stood the cashier, the woman who had insulted Franklin, arms crossed, lips tight, chatting casually with another employee. She glanced up, and when she saw who was walking toward her, the blood drained from her face. Her posture stiffened immediately, and the smirk she had worn moments before vanished completely. "Mr. Allen," she said, her voice cracking ever so slightly. "Aye, what brings you here today?" The store owner didn't respond immediately. He looked at her in silence for a long moment, then turned to Franklin and said, loud enough for every employee and nearby shopper to hear, "Is this the woman who harassed you?" Franklin stared at her, jaw clenched. "Yes," he said simply. "She told me to leave because of my skin. She called security, lied about me being aggressive, had me thrown out like trash." The woman began to panic, her words tumbling out quickly. "No, that's not. I didn't mean it like that. He misunderstood me. I was just doing my job. I thought he was acting suspicious." "Enough," the store owner interrupted, his voice like thunder. "You humiliated a customer in my store, treated him like a criminal, lied about his behavior, and used your position to weaponize your prejudice. That is not just bad for business. That is evil. Do you understand me?" Her mouth opened and closed, struggling to form a defense, but there was nothing to say. "Mr. Allen, please, I didn't mean any harm, I swear. I was just trying to protect the store. By abusing innocent people?" he snapped. "You think that's protection? You think that's acceptable?" Her eyes welled with tears. "I'm sorry, I really am. I'll apologize to him. I'll apologize to everyone. Please, don't fire me." "You're not just fired," he said, stepping back. "You're banned. I don't want people like you representing my company, ever." Then, turning to the two security guards who had appeared behind them again, listening in, he said, "And the two of you didn't ask questions, didn't review footage, didn't use an ounce of judgment. You just dragged him out because it was easy. That ends today. Hand in your badges to the front office." "Sir, we were just following a report," the older guard protested. "We thought—" "You didn't think," Allen snapped. "You followed bias like sheep. That's not safety. That's cowardice. You're dismissed." Both guards stiffened but didn't argue further. They turned and walked toward the front in silence. The cashier was still standing there, stunned, her mouth still trembling with unspoken pleas. "Go," the store owner said, refusing to look at her again. "And take your hatred with you." She turned and walked away slowly, shoulders slumped, her world crashing around her with every step. Alan took a deep breath, then turned back to Franklin. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice lower now. "No words can undo what happened, but I want to make it right. Come with me." He led Franklin to the back office, past rows of shelves, past lingering stares and awkward silences. Once inside, he called for a store assistant, asked them to prepare every item Franklin had originally intended to buy, plus more. Franklin watched silently as bags of food were collected, item after item, more than he could have ever carried on his own. Alan handed them to him personally. "No charge," he said. "None. This isn't charity. This is justice." Franklin took the bags, his hands slightly trembling, now not with anger, but with the leftover adrenaline of the day. He nodded his thanks, but his face was unreadable. "I appreciate what you did," he said, "but it doesn't fix everything. This happens everywhere. Every day. And most people like her don't get called out. Most people like me don't get believed." "I know," Alan said, looking down. "And I'll spend the rest of my time making sure this store never becomes a place like that again." Franklin stared at him for a moment longer, then turned toward the door. "Good luck with that," he said, and walked out. The automatic doors opened once more, but this time he wasn't being pushed. He wasn't being thrown out. He left on his own terms. But even as the sun greeted him again, even as his hands clutched bags of food he no longer had to pay for, Franklin felt hollow inside. Because this wasn't about groceries. This was about dignity. And though he had stood up for himself, though he had seen justice served, the truth lingered like a shadow. He had never wanted a confrontation. He had wanted a sandwich, a quiet day, a simple moment of peace. But even that had been stolen.